This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of December 26th, 2022. I'm recording this on a Friday because of the holiday, of course. Solid Signal's offices are open on Monday, but I will not personally be there, so I'm recording this a little bit earlier. My gift to all of you, I suppose. This is the last podcast of the year. We'll start 2023 fresh, but I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of look at just a little bit that's happened over the past year and why I was a little bit surprised by the biggest development of the year. I'll be running a bunch of best of articles, as always, on the Solid Signal blog, blog.solidsignal.com, over the coming week, and I encourage you to take a look at them. But for now, let's just talk. I think what really surprised me over the last 12 months more than anything else was the extent to which streaming went from being a super cool thing that everybody was talking about and a must-have to a source of more headaches than you could possibly imagine. I think streaming is with us now and it's not going away. I grant you that. But at the same time, it seems like it's become more of a necessary evil than anything else. I can't tell you the last time I really found pleasure in streaming. Yeah, I found pleasure in some of the programs that I watched, but I would have been just as happy to watch them on satellite, possibly happier. The biggest change for me wasn't just the increase in prices. Yeah, prices increase all the time. It's the pivot that I think we're seeing across the entire streaming landscape away from real customer service and customer choice. Oh, they'll tell you it's about customer choice, but it turns out it looks more like trying to save money and paying for stuff on the backs of existing customers. And I kind of get it. I do. This was the year that the bubble kind of burst for streaming. It used to be that streaming companies didn't really care how much money they made. They cared about how many subscribers they got because they thought eventually subscribers would lead to higher profits. That's true, but of course that means you also have to not spend, $100 million on a movie that you're going to have no revenue on other than what your subscribers give you. And if that movie isn't terribly good, then that's a big old bomb for you. That's a big loss, and you can try to put it other places, but it's not going to get you what you need. Apps like Netflix learned that, and when we saw a lot of changes in the streaming landscape based on the cost equation. The first thing that we saw was that it seemed like everybody and their brother was adding an advertiser-supported tier. Like, this is going to save them. It's funny. It's like those who are not willing to remember the past or doomed to repeat it, or the way that they put that. I don't remember the exact quote, but there it is. 20 years ago, we all couldn't wait to skip commercials. We were willing to pay extra to skip commercials, buy our own DVRs for hundreds of dollars just so that we could do it. And now every streaming app says, oh, well, we'll give them a tier with commercials. And I have to wonder, is it really just kind of spite? Like, oh, well, we're going to give them the tier, and then if they don't take it up, then we know that it's not our fault. Or is it just that they think that we're willing to live with commercials, which a lot of us, really don't want to do? If you're talking about watching a movie, more than anything else, it's broken up by commercials, and commercials really take you out of it. Maybe less so with a short episodic program, but with a movie, I really hate watching movies with commercials. It really, really gets under my skin. And yet now everybody wants to add a commercial tier. Netflix has done it. HBO Max was one of the first to do it. Disney Plus has done it. Paramount Plus has had one from day one. Hulu had one from day one. And so it's just, it's the popular thing to do now. And I don't think it's very customer friendly. I don't think that it adds value. What it does is tries to tell you that it saves money, but really what they're trying to do is just add commercials for the same price. What they're trying to do is say, okay, we were going to charge you $10 for the plan that has no commercials, and now we're going to charge you $10 for the plan that has commercials. Again, not very customer friendly. In fact, adding all of these separate choices isn't terribly customer friendly either. You'd think, okay, well, it's, it gives customers the opportunity to do whatever they want and need. But it's confusing, and there have been some cases where specifically Netflix has hid some of the more popular options, so forcing you into taking an option that you really don't want to take. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Um, and this has been a big part of what I would call the decline of the love affair with streaming over the last year. Another big part, of course, we can't really get away from talking about streaming without talking about the major pivot in HBO Max. I'm sad to say I didn't see this one coming. I hoped that we wouldn't see anything like this, and I certainly didn't see anything so severe happening so quickly after Discovery Networks took over HBO Max. HBO Max has always been a pretty expensive product, and, on the other hand, it delivered really good value thanks to a really good curated selection of original programs. Now, unless you've been hiding under a rock all year, you know that HBO Max has really, really changed over the last 6 to 9 months. Um, Projects have been canceled, stuff has been taken off the app, premieres have been put off, stuff has been removed, and it's funny. I used to go to HBO Max pretty much every other day to find something new to watch. I really find myself now going to that app about once a week, and it's become one of my least favorite ones because of the high price involved. And I can't help but think that at some point Discovery Networks has got to look at the math here. The expectation is in 2023 that they're going to have one app that combines the Discovery content and the HBO Max content. No idea how much it's going to cost. If you're paying for both right now, you're paying about $25 a month. I don't think a $25 app is going to fly, especially considering how savagely they have emptied HBO Max of a lot of its key content. Not sure how they're going to do that or what they're going to do. That's something that we will see in 2023. But it's just emblematic, I think, of what we're seeing throughout the streaming landscape. And I'll say, too, this is another case where those who did not live through the past or are not willing to learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat it. And I've talked about this before, too, because it's another one of those tropes I like to repeat. Back in the 1990s, NBC really focused its efforts on a couple of very, very high profile programs. At the time, it was Friends, ER, Seinfeld. And these were the shows that were really bringing in the dollars. And NBC poured huge amounts into salaries, development budgets, all sorts of things. And the net result was they'd had no money to put toward new programming. By focusing all of their cash in one place, what happened was it ended up being a net loss over time. NBC started to decline quickly in the early 2000s when those shows left the network. And I'm going to argue that they never quite got their mojo back after that. And yet, what are we seeing with Amazon? Amazon put $1 zillion into the Rings of Power. I'm not quite sure it was merited. And a couple of other high-profile projects. Netflix has been hitting you month after month after month with extremely expensive and lavishly produced projects that haven't really satisfied the public. A lot of movies that just haven't been very well reviewed. And of course, Disney has done really well with their high budget stuff, but then there's a lot of stories about how Disney is really not the profitable company that it once was and how they may have to diversify and unload some of their assets in order to keep going for the next couple of years. And I also have to think that some of that has to be the huge amount of money that they've spent on projects like Andor, The Mandalorian, all the Star Wars stuff, because that just can't be cheap, even if all of your labor is internal. Really, I think that it would have been a better idea for all of these apps to be, spreading the cash around a little bit, put some smart development money in a lot of different places rather than focusing it on a very small number of projects, because in the end, that's going to hurt you. It all adds up to what I've called in the past streampocalypse, where I think that there's going to be a shakeout in streaming apps. Some are going to get too expensive and then they're going to suffer really quickly. Others are going to rise and then fall. But in the end, it's a shame, but I think that the days where we could get a huge amount of streaming content and great quality stuff for a very low price are gone. Now, that's just economics to some degree. It really is to some degree. You can't have it that good for so long and not have it affect the bottom line. But the shift has been so quick that I'm a little worried that consumers as a whole will get whiplash. There's one more thing that I want to talk about very briefly, this being the end of the podcast. It was recently announced that YouTube will be the exclusive streaming home for NFL Sunday Ticket starting in the 2023 season. I'm not going to comment or editorialize on that because I don't think we have the whole story yet. I would just caution anybody who's willing to jump to conclusions to remember that anybody who really knows what's going on behind the scenes isn't going to tell you. And anybody who tells you that they do know what's going on behind the scenes and posts that on a public website is not going to know what's going on for very long. I think there's a lot more of that story to be painted. And there's a lot of kind of pieces and parts to that where you say that's good or bad or indifferent. I'm hesitant to say much other than stay tuned and let's not close the book on what's happened in the past. Speaking of the past, as I said, this is the last Solid Signal podcast for 2022. For a lot of us, 2022 has been a great year, a year of growth, a year of change, a year of returning to normal. For others, it's been really a tougher year than before for a lot of reasons. No matter what your 2022 was like, I hope for all of us that 23 ends up being a better year, a great year for everyone. And I will see you back at the Solid Signal podcast for the first podcast of 2023 next week.